Thank you for coming and joining with us today. I know we're all busy and know we've got plenty of things to do, so I hope that the information we give you today will help you, give you some things to think about, maybe equip you to better do business in the mission that your particular organization has. As we look today at grants, probably not a better time than today to look at those, considering I know that there are many of the nonprofits that are receiving additional funds at this time with COVID and all the pandemic. And so I hope that today's information will be helpful to you. So we'll jump right in. As we get into Intacct, this is just a dashboard from the beginning that is a wonderful part of Intacct that allows you to keep track on just about any area of your accounting as well as statistical information, and can be customized for each of the individuals within your organization. But today, as we look at projects and grants, and looks at grants particularly, we'll look at that part of the module. As we go through the module, first place we come to, well, put that in the wrong place there. Let me back up. As we go through the module, first thing you want to see is the list of the different grants that are in your system. As you can see here, there are a number of things I want to show you just from the list as we go into this. You can see the list here, the ability to create parent and child grants within the system, the ability to keep track at a glance of the status and where each of them are, and who is manager of the particular grant. Let's look today at Health Initiative and look at this particular grant. I want to show you, there's one of the things about Intacct is that's good is the significant amount of information that can be gathered. The hope is that most all information you're going to need for your grant is going to be contained right here to manage it once you secure the grant and as you begin to manage it. So as you go to the information sheet, you can see the various things. You can see the type of category of a grant that it is, whether it's capitalized, internal, billable, or non-billable. Most of them will be contract. And so you go through and you can see the different information that's made available to you. One thing that's interesting on this particular page, and I won't hit every item, is the ability, you see two items here that are kind of confusing at first glance. You have grant status and you have status. This status here is the one we usually think of, whether it's active or inactive. This particular status is a customizable status that allows you to put the different phases of your grant. The ability of that allows you to decide and prevent expenses such at different phases. And so you can do different things with that so that you have more control over that. Nothing worse than having an expense come in later on after a grant is closed out and everything is done. So we go through there and you can see that. Then we go to the other additional tabs that are there, additional information that is available to us. You can track progress at a glance of where you are in the grant. You're able to, at a glance, see the contract amount, how the billing is done, the dimensions. And we'll see this in a moment whenever we get ready to bill for this grant. You can enter the default dimensions for this. Again, keeping down errors as we go through here, and as you add these different pieces of information, it cuts down errors in the reporting, it cuts down errors on the invoicing for the particular grant. So on this particular grant, and you can add whatever dimensions you want, but here we have the dimensions of the department, the fund, and restriction. And so when you get ready to bill, those things are hard-coded in. Now you can override those when you get into billing, but this allows you to stop some of the mistakes that may be made. A neat thing about this particular page also is this bottom section here, which is SEF Details, is a customizable area. So I'm going to show you a lot of fields where you can place information, but in addition to all those fields, then they allow you to allow customizable. Another piece, since we're at the bottom here, that you can do, there's a collaborator within Intacct that allows you to write notes and to post, and therefore anybody that's working in that can see the various notes that are there, and you can share back and forth with those. It's kind of a souped up texting that's tied to the particular page that you're on. As we go to resources and pricing, we can see here that you can set up some of the pricing that you're going to charge back to the grant from the outset, from the setup. In this particular one, you have an employee here, and you decide on the item. In this particular time, it's billable time, and you can put their hourly rate in there. You can also, if you're going to charge a plus fee on that, you can add a plus fee on that. And that way, when you get, and we'll go through that today, but as we get to the billing itself, to the invoicing, those things will automatically be plugged in and be provided for you, so you're not going back and looking at the different rates and those sort of things. When you get to the grant summary page, you see it is just that. It is this financial summary of the various, this is a multi-entity setup that we have here. And so you've got the different entities that are tied in possibly to that grant, but there's the actual grant information. So there's the financial summary. Here's the budget for that of the grant. There's the hours that have been spent in that, and then the different expenses. And so all those things at a glance, be able to see what's going on with that. Next up is invoice options. If actual billings exceed budgeted amount, what do you do? Do you do nothing? Are you able to go ahead and invoice that or not? Some things there to set up the invoicing. And then finally, the task. This allows you to set up tasks that may be needed through the process of expenses. And so you can tie that to the different phases of the project, of the grant, and that can be used later on in billing. So as you can see, there's a significant number of items, a significant amount of information that can be saved here and then be used throughout the system. There's also a Gantt chart, which is quite interesting, and may not take the place of all planning on this, but you are able to put the different phases in and be able to see where you are in the process on those things. So as you're putting together, as you're managing your grant, let's jump into the issue of time and expenses. Time and expenses, in this particular case, we want to look at time and expenses that are going to be billed to the particular grant. So I'm going to jump from this page where I am a manager in this particular case, to me just as an employee. And so employees can enter their own time and expenses. Now there's a couple of ways. I'm going to show you manually how that can be done, where they can go in and enter those today. Also, there are other solutions that we provide that would be able to integrate with Intacct and be able to run those in, and also be mobile, that when you have employees out in the field, they can collect those, they can take pictures of those and enter them into the system directly and integrate them with Intacct. But we'll do it manually today. So when you go in, let's look at timesheets first. So an employee can go in, open their timesheets. I started one here already, so let's look at this. And as you can see here, the dates have been set for this. Description can be put in. You can set up an approval system. In this particular one, because of the role that I have in the system, it's marked automatically approved, but it can be submitted for approval if you have an employee that you do not want to have their own approval themselves. And then you just enter the amount of hours. An additional thing that can be done with this is if there is documentation that needs to be done, an attachment can be made. So the attachment is in the system, and I'll show you part of that as we go through. Let's save an attachment here just for sake of the situation today, and I'll show you how we'll get to that later on in the system. So there is a timesheet for the expenses. Those are submitted. and it's taken care of. Now let's go to the expenses themselves. So an employee goes into my expenses. Again, let me pull up one that I've started here. And you can see here, and something I did not show you a moment ago, but let me show you on this particular one. So I've picked this Health Initiative 1 grant award. So I'm tying it to this particular grant, and I'm giving the information that is needed there. Automatically, the department, as I mentioned earlier in the information, the department is already labeled for you so that you do not have to, so an employee does not have to know what dimension or what code that goes in there. And then if the expense is marked as billable, and this is a key piece of this puzzle, is marked as billable, it's going to go through and automatically be able to tie it back to this particular grant. So, so it's marked billable, the expense is put in, and it's saved for later on, and so we're done with that particular one. Then, and I mentioned a moment ago, the issue of approving, you can have, let me flip out of that, flip back to my other personality here. Approve expenses, they'll be able to just pull up, if you're the one doing the approval, you can approve here. You can put any comments in. You can approve or decline. If there are multiple lines here, you can approve or decline by line. You can see again the check mark is it's billable, and it's billable to a grant. Here we've switched grants, but to Holcomb grant. And so all those things are tied together. And in this particular case, it's a personal credit card, so it's not non-reimbursable. It is reimbursed. And if it was a corporate card, it'd be non-reimbursed. And so if you decline it and there's comments that are put in there, that way the employee can see why it was declined and resubmit it. I mentioned a moment ago about the attachment. So in this particular case, you can see there's an attachment on this particular expense. And so that attachment is going to go with it, of course, through the whole system. So we're going to approve all on this particular one and send it through the system. And I have another one for our example as well today. And that can also be done. This is expenses can also be done with timesheets as well. So then we have our expenses, we have our timesheets. The next piece of the puzzle in that process is to create invoices for the grant. And so we're going to go to generate invoices, and we're going to select which grant that we're talking about. And if you remember earlier, we did a grant for this Health Initiative 1, the 2015-2017. And we're going to pull up a preview of that particular grant. Now, what's interesting is in the timesheet earlier, which I think I failed to mention a moment ago, but I had in the timesheet, I had entered time for Health Initiative and for another grant. So the individual as an individual, let me go back and pull that out right quick. So if we go back to my timesheets and go back to this particular timesheet, if you'll notice here, this particular individual worked for a couple of days doing work for Rural Health Network and a couple of days for Health Initiative 1, and then submitted all those things. The check mark shows that they've been approved, and all those things have been sent through. But he entered timesheets, and you can enter multiple grants, and on the expenses the same way. And then when you get ready to do an invoicing and you pull the invoices that you need, it is only pulling the invoices for the ones where we actually did the time. So here are the 2 days that were listed back on the original timesheet. So going back to that, again, these are marked billable. There's for Health Initiative, there's a Monday and a Thursday. And you go to the invoice and there's 7 hours on each of those. And you see this, the 27th and the 30th of April. The billable has brought them automatically in. If you remember from the beginning, when I entered the information, it showed how much per hour we were charging for this employee. And so all the employee had to enter was their number of hours. And again, that can be integrated with another software that they can actually keep time clock. But here the price is put in, and so you have that. It also pulled from the expenses the steak dinner out on the 27th, and it pulled that as well. And so it runs all, so there's all the expenses put together. So you go through that, you create the invoice. Oh, got an error. You back up. I'm not sure what I did wrong there. Let me back up. Let's go to, well, generate invoices. Try this one more time. If not, if I missed a glitch here. I think I already put them together, and so they're already tied. I've already got them tied up here. Yeah, I created it before we began. So let me go back to here. And what you end up with is to be able to print or view the email or the actual invoices. And then you customize that invoice and you're ready to go with it. And so, and the invoices are completely customizable for you, and you're able to do that. Now, let me go to one last section for us today, and that is the issue of reporting. So we can do, we can get the information concerning the grants. We can gather that. We can build that as the foundation. We can gather our expenses of expenses from employees, of time of employees. Also, one thing I did not show was just purchases that are made. You can do that easily through accounts payable. And again, you can bill that directly to the grants and put that in the invoice as well. Then the final piece of the puzzle is to know whether or not how all this comes together when you begin to report on it. So I've created a report here that allows us to see some of these things. So let's do a preview of this report. And if you notice here, I've got the revenues inception to date. So we got the various grants that are there. We have the award amount, so how much they have awarded to us, and then how much revenue has actually come in. And so in the next line, you have next column, how much is left in that. If you have in this particular one, this 13 to 15 shows there's $791,000 left of the awarded amount. Then the expenditures, and then therefore the remaining funds. So this report allows you to see at a glance, and the reports within Intacct are very customizable. You can do so many things with them. And if you want a further demo, we can show you some of those things. But there's so many things that they can do. But as we look at the reports and just a major overview of this, one of the neat things about Intacct is the ability to drill down in each of these. And so in this particular case, let's say that we're going to drill down in these expenditures. As you go through here, you pull up the expenditures, and it shows you all the expenditures that have put in to make up that $400 and some thousand that we saw on the original report. In addition to that, you can continue to drill further. And in this particular one, we see the expenses. And then these are not the same expenses that we dealt with earlier, but here you can say, here are the expenses as they were originally entered directly into the system. And so if there was an attachment, the attachment would be right here as well. So as I mentioned from the very beginning, when timesheets or expense reimbursements or payable information, invoices from vendors, all those can be attached, and they are available then all the way down as you drill down. So if you have different individuals within your organization that are entering information, when you get to the end of the process, the CFO or whoever else needs to see them can drill down and see the actual documentation to make sure that you have all the information that you need. Again, you can collaborate on that. Hey, here's a problem. I'm not seeing an attachment here. Is there something we need to attach? And you can connect that to different employees within the system. They can see it, and then it can be handled from there. And so a lot of flexibility with this, a lot of flexibility of reporting to give you the information that you need. So I hope that helps you see a little bit today from gathering the information of your grant. Once the grant is secured or even applied for, you can begin to build that database to items that are purchased with that grant. Expenses that are incurred with that grant, those are saved, and they are tagged from the moment they come into your system, and then they're invoiced straight from that, and then automatically end up on the different reports that you may have, either this report or other reports that you may want to run concerning them. And so all those things are available to you with the projects module, and we hope that helps. Again, if you have further questions, we'll allow for questions this afternoon. But then also, if you have further questions or want to see more, please reach out to us and let us know. So I'll turn this back to Megan. And Megan, do we have any questions?
All right, thank you so much, Mark. I know that was a high-level overview in the short 30 minutes that we have today, but you still gave us a lot of great information, so I appreciate that. Looks like we don't have any questions yet as of now, but just a reminder to everybody, if you do have a question for Mark over anything he went over today, you can submit that into the Q&A portion on your control panel now. And while we're waiting for any more questions, I did want to launch a quick poll real quick. This is just going to let us know how to best follow up with you following today's webinar. So you should see that appear on your screen now. And if you just could choose one of the options below, it'll just help us know how we can best follow up with you and help you out following today's webinar. So I'll give everyone just a few seconds to finish that and wait for any more questions that we may have. Great. While we're waiting for those to come in, I just want to let you know that we do hope you enjoyed today's webinar and that we do hope you join us for future webinars as well. You can find out about our upcoming webinars by visiting our website at www.jmtconsulting.com and clicking on the Events tab. And you can find all our webinars there. We have webinars pretty frequently here at JMT and have bumped them up a lot now that we've all been working remotely. So we do hope that you join us for webinars in the future for some more great information like what you saw today. So, all right, looks like most people have responded in the poll. So we'll go ahead and end that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It looks like we don't have any further questions, so we won't take up any more of your time today. Just want to thank everyone for coming again, and thank you so much, Mark, for giving us that overview of the grant management functionality in Sage Intacct. We do hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy and continuing to do that in this time. And we just thank everyone for coming today. We hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Bye, everyone.